Welcome to the 2022 Kentucky Bourbon Festival and the first edition of the Bourbon 30 Talk Show. This is sponsored by Great Western Malting. Bourbon 30 Talk Show, where you get to meet industry stars like Lynn and all the people that you want to ask questions of and learn about their cool jobs in the whiskey industry and remember why you were here, right? To celebrate bourbon. Isn't that what we're all doing today? Woohoo! Come on, a little more energy. You're getting too relaxed in the shade with all that liquor in you. My name's Steve Coomes. I'm the Director of Content and Programming for the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. And I'm thrilled to be here and interviewing Lynn House from Heaven Hill. Lynn, what is your exact title?
The exact title is National Spirit Specialist and Portfolio Mixologist.
That's a lot of stuff, right? Well, translates into she's a badass mixologist, and she just got done serving a gig upstairs for us, where she taught people how to make cocktails, how to make Sazerac.
Oh, yeah.
Sazerac, Manhattan, and Old Fashioned, the classics. But talk a little bit about the job. Let's do it from two levels. What's the 10,000-foot view of your job in the industry now? What do you see that we on the ground don't see? Trends?
Oh, my goodness. Trends, whiskey, bourbon, continue with trends with that, innovation. People who I think may have not felt like they were part of the conversation, joining in the conversation. So it's become a much more diverse enjoying drinking group there, so that's great. So, because we're bringing in flavors and traditions and all of that. I think after the last couple years, fun is returning.
Fun's coming back to whiskey?
Fun's coming back to whiskey. People want to have fun. We were locked up. And we got super, super serious about whiskey, too, for a while. So people are looking at fun. And just to return to those classics, not the super, super extra fancy drinks, but those things that have been the foundation of the whiskey industry for centuries.
But your career sprung from being a mixologist, and you probably like those super, super technical drinks. So
that's where I started, in Chicago. So that's where I live. And I ran some beverage programs down there that were definitely in the high end.
Talk about some of the places you've worked, because I've recognized several of those.
So I was one of the original master bartenders at the Drawing Room. In Chicago. We were the second behind Violet, our craft cocktail bar. I went on to be the chief mixologist and run the beverage program at Graham Elliott, which was a James Beard Michelin-starred restaurant. And prior to coming for Heaven Hill, I ran the beverage program at Blackbird under Paul Cahan, again, James Beard Michelin-starred. So I was the chief mixologist for that program.
That's so cool. How did you wind up at Heaven Hill? Did they seek you, or did you seek them?
I sought them. I'd done a little work with Heaven Hill one-off before for just some events and such, so I really knew the family, the company. There was a lot of great respect. But, standing on your feet all day behind a bar, you start to get a little tired, so you look for that next step.
I'm sure.
And my initial job at Heaven Hill was that of the National Palma brand ambassador. So I focused on one brand when I started, and there was an opening there at that time.
Is that easier or harder to focus on one brand? Because I would imagine in the mixology role, you got to make it into a lot of different things, not just Palma.
Exactly. You get there's times when you're like, I can't think of one more Palma and bourbon, Palma tequila, Palma vodka cocktail. It starts to get rote. And so with Heaven Hill's huge portfolio, I just myself was like, I come from spirits, know spirits, love spirits, and so was on my own dabbling with the rest of the portfolio. I then was promoted to National Brand Educator after about 2 years, where my core job expanded. And 3 years, I moved into the position that I am now, where I oversee the entire portfolio, working on the mixology side.
So, I asked Max Shapiro one time, president of Heaven Hill, or actually executive chairman, he just stepped down from his president's role. How many brands are in the portfolio? And he said, there's not a computer large enough to calculate that.
That's correct.
So how much of the portfolio do you actually work with?
I would say actively of the portfolio, I probably work with about 35 to 40%. depending upon the season.
Oh my gosh.
There's a lot of brands, and of course we've got some international exclusive brands, and there's some brands that I just touch for a little bit. But that's rapidly changing again as the world's opened up and festivals have returned and venues are opening. So there's we're thirsty right now. So
Yeah, well, that's excellent. So, talk a little bit about your recent award at Tales of the Cocktail in New Orleans. You were National Brand Ambassador of the Year. Is that correct?
yes, I won Best U.S. Brand Ambassador in
Give
the
her a little
country.
love,
So
folks. Come on. Put your whiskey down. Put your hands together. It ain't going anywhere.
yeah, so it's Tales of the Cocktail like this. It's an amazing festival and coming together of everyone in the spirits industry. And each year they have the Spirit Awards. So there's different national and different international categories. Brands win, and bars win, hotels win, bartenders win. This was my third year being nominated for National Brand Ambassador, and I took home the big award this year. So.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, what do you think their criteria is for that? Why did they pick you, or any of them?
Oh my goodness. You're nominated by your peers. And so they're blind nominations. So that's people out there that see something that you're doing or recognize something or see the work that you're doing. And then there's a selection of committees that whittle it down and whittle it down. Obviously, you have to work in the U.S., portfolio manager, or it could be a single brand manager too. But I think they really like to see the work that you're doing in community, the way that you're promoting the industry, kind of also just how you represent yourself out. You can't be the old W.C. Fields person out in the market doing things.
Half drunk.
Half drunk
And in front of a camera.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then education is really important. So a lot of what I do is education, not just cocktail education, but spirit education. I do education on brands. I do education on how to compete, and it's just making your mark. So
That's interesting. So you're talking about competing. You're talking about teaching bartenders to compete. What does that raising that skill level do for them in front of the public? I mean, do they earn better tips? Do they sell more booze? I mean, how does that work?
well, as someone who used to compete a lot as a bartender, it definitely helps build that brand of that person to get them know, because we live in this age of, I say, barsonalities and cocktail-celebrities. And when people are trying...
Barsonalities
and cocktail-celebrities.
Wow, that should be a sobriety test. Say those two words in a row. Anyway,
so as
sorry.
you're trying to develop yourself and get yourself known and promote yourself and obviously work in better places, bigger jobs, competing hones in your skill set. Competing helps with networking. Competing gets you noticed. When I won competitions, that's how I ended up with features in, GQ and Savoir Magazine and New York Times and Martha Stewart, because those were all a result of competition wins. So it was promoting my own brand. So teaching bartenders how to compete is helping hone in that skill set that helps them develop their careers.
That's so cool. Do you know Gary Groover?
I do know Gary very well.
So Gary is a bartender from Louisville who had a resume of about 3 spots long. I think it was an O'Charlie's, an Italian restaurant, maybe something else. Became spirits educator for Southern Glazers, which is a sponsor of this festival. And now he is the...
For Marriott, yeah.
For Marriott, global spirits director for Marriott. The guy never went to college. He just worked his ass off, competed like crazy, honed his craft, and is a great guy.
Yes. Yeah, I've known him for years. So
Yeah.
I've known him since bartending days.
Yeah.
And that's one of those ways, part of how, like I said, I got to break out and other friends was competing and getting your face out there, getting your name out there, differentiating yourself. So
Is that pretty risky? I mean, in terms of at least your self-esteem, because when you go against some of these real tough people, I mean, that's got to be, could be humiliating. Never know.
I have definitely spent a time or two in a corner crying when I win a competition. Like, how did that person get it? But that's also a skill set to develop. Like, we're all going to trip up, we're all going to fall. You're not always going to succeed 100% at everything. So it teaches you humility and it teaches you grace. I tell people you got to win with grace and you got to lose with grace, and that's
right.
really important in life.
So, out of all the portfolio at Heaven Hill, what are some of your favorite spirits? You can go off the whiskey board if you want.
Oh boy. Probably my favorites. Well, in the whiskeys, I would definitely say Henry McKenna is my favorite in the bourbon portfolio. Sacred Bond in the bonded brand.
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
It's the only bottled in bond American grape brandy in the United States, and it's
That's right.
the result of a cross collaboration between my counterpart Bernie Lubbers, who'll be here tomorrow.
That's
And
right.
myself. So he came from the bonded world, and I came from cocktail world, and so
And the twain met, and look what
and the
happened.
twain met, and that's what we had. So I love that. That's just got a secret passion for me, and I'm a tequila girl as well. So I love the Luna Azul Añejo. So
It's excellent. And are you pretty excited about that tequila ocho being brought
I'm
into?
excited about the tequila ocho and the Vago mezcal. So as our
Oh, yeah.
portfolio is just
That's so cool.
increased. I remember when tequila ocho was launched and going to those as a bartender, and so now to have it as part of our family is amazing.
Yeah. Anybody tequila fan out there?
Mezcal,
Mezcal.
Vago.
They're wonderful. Got to buy the good stuff like she's talking about. Where do you see? Well, let me ask you this: when people ask you about your cocktail work, I'm not sure I know how to make good cocktails. People will ask you surely all the time. How do you start? Do you teach me the three? I mean, you think I've been drinking all day, but I haven't. All the 3 ingredient basics that are so easy to build and riff on. Is that where you start? Old fashioned
Absolutely.
Manhattan Sazerac, which is 4, I guess, right?
Well, they're all off a base, and that's the base of what a cocktail is. So by definition, a cocktail is spirit, bitters, sugar, water. And if you look at almost every single cocktail, that's what it is. So it's understanding foundation, right? It's just like building a good house. So when I'm teaching people about cocktails, it's like understand that foundation. And when you look at that foundation, you want to start with integrity of base. So you want to start with great spirits. You want to have integrity of secondary ingredients. So it doesn't make sense to work with a really great bourbon and then put like artificial mixer with it. So you want to work with fresh juices. And so it's like an isosceles triangle. And then the third part is balance. So you want to taste the spirit, you want to taste the sweet, you want to taste the bitter. It's like a great glass of wine. It should hit all the parts in your mouth. And then when you start with that and understand that foundation, you can start to build upon it and tweak and put your flavors and your preferences on that. So that's where I start with cocktails.
So who makes cocktails at home?
Woo!
Let's see some more. Really? Y'all just drink it from the bottle? There we go.
I do that too sometimes.
I mean, especially, so I also write about whiskey, but I get a lot of samples. And sometimes that's how I hit the reference. Just a sip, just a sip, just a sip, put it down. Well, I'm going to work with that one tonight,
Yeah.
How do you avoid boredom with all the spirits that are in your house? Do you ever have to escape and say, my gosh, I just need a smoothie?
Oh, yes. Definitely. I mean, there's just times when it sounds sacrilege here. I'm like, I just can't have another Manhattan or.
Yeah.
And so I'll flip it up usually to something lighter, just like a nice low ABV or spritz, or go to wine or beer for a little bit to give myself a break. And but I always find a love and come back to what I love. So.
Oh, yeah, it's fun. What's your go-to cocktail? You've mentioned Manhattan twice, I think.
Manhattan growing up was my go-to cocktail. It's also how I judge a cocktail bar as to how they make their Manhattan. But right now, my go-to cocktail, probably if I was sitting at a bar or at home, I'd want to see if you had the ingredients to make a Boulevardier.
Do I know what a Boulevardier is? Tell them. We got
All
one,
right.
yes.
So y'all ever heard of a Negroni? Hands up of a Negroni. Well,
Look
a
at 'em.
Boulevardier is even better because it's made with bourbon. So it's that same base formula of bourbon, sweet vermouth, and Campari. I do equal parts. And what's nice is it's a great aperitif. It's light. It's not too sweet, and it hits my palate. And it's a great way for me when I'm going out to kick off the night.
It is. I mean, it's simple. 1-1-1, as they say.
1-1-1.
All equal parts. Sometimes you want to. I'll cut it in half because it's a punch in the face. A lot of alcohol.
It's a punch in the face, but the sweet vermouth and the Campari are a little lower ABV, and I don't know. I take a harder punch in the face than I think that most people do. We have a lot of high proof brands at Heaven Hill, so I'm very used to drinking 100 proof and 100 plus proof.
Yeah.
So I don't get I don't get phased very often.
Yeah, that and try to have food in your stomach. If I don't do that, I could be in trouble quickly.
Right.
Yeah, Boulevardier is great. So you had mentioned you judge a cocktail bar by how well or how poorly they make a Manhattan. What's a poorly made Manhattan?
First of all, poorly made Manhattan is if you're going to shake that, because that's a bourbon and water, okay? Because you've added too much dilution into it. I want to taste that whiskey. I want to taste that vermouth. I want to taste that bitters. So I want to see it stirred. I want to make sure you're using a good vermouth. And don't dump the cherry juice
Ever.
ever in that, particularly that Dayglow cherry juice that you see. But I can't tell
Nasty.
you how many Manhattans I grew up and people just would pour that cherry juice in. I've literally ordered Manhattan in a bar and watched them do that and cancel it and just ask for a Budweiser behind it. So, because it's not worth my while.
I think people still struggle with the old fashioned because I see, the muddled fruit. If you like it, that's fine. But I mean, to me, it ruins the presentation because it's cloudy all of a sudden.
Right.
And it's dominated by juice rather than the expressed orange peel.
Well, I'm from Ohio originally, and I grew up with the muddled fruit one and with the Dayglow cherry muddled in it. So I didn't grow up, and then I moved to Chicago, so close to Wisconsin, where I was introduced to the sweet brandy old fashioned,
Yeah.
where they float Sprite on top of that.
Yeah.
And that was a whole nother kind of, that's the punch in my face. But as my palate grew and as I learned more about cocktails and spirits, I really learned how to make cocktails that celebrated the integrity of the base. And so I'm a no muddled fruit person. Your sweet, half ounce simple syrup, quarter simple syrup, all depends upon what you like. I say use simple syrup so that you can keep it consistent. And Thomas Bullock made his with a lemon twist, but I'm not opposed to an orange twist either. So
Yeah, because you did lemon twist today on the
I did a lemon
group
twist
one.
today because
Yeah.
I wanted to honor Mr. Bullock from Louisville. So
But I love both sometimes in there, lemon and orange twist. Any questions for this knowledgeable lady? Any cocktail questions? Yes, sir.
what was my favorite first bourbon I ever had? All right, well, I'm going to tell on my parents here. So my mom's originally from Bowling Green, Kentucky. And I had my first bourbons when I was about 3 months old. I was telling the cocktail class that Ambisol and cough syrup didn't exist in our house. So it was rub that bourbon on make those hot toddies. And my parents used to throw parties and put a little, shot in our Similac so that we would sleep through the party. So I've been primed for this industry. So my first bourbons I probably ever had that I didn't mind, which explains also my palate, was my parents and grandparents were granddad drinkers,
Nice.
old 100 proof granddad, and so that's what was always in the house. So don't tell these guys. Oh, what to pair with a Manhattan? I like definitely. There's some fun. The chocolate notes are nice. We did a little chocolate, but like a bittersweet, and because you want to also look at if you've got some rye in that base there, because that's going to bring out spice notes. I also think Manhattan is nice with charcuterie. Some
Absolutely.
nice, really great
Absolutely.
full meats that have got some spice and got some oiliness, because it's going to stand up to it, and the acid from the vermouth is going to kind of cut through that.
Excellent. Yeah, big fan of ham. Well-aged ham and whiskey.
Yeah, match
Absolutely.
made in heaven.
Lynn, let's talk a little bit about diversity. You had mentioned that earlier, that's changing in the industry. Is it? I was talking to somebody earlier on the show. We were talking about a top-down initiative versus a bottom-up initiative. Where is that happening that you're seeing more people of color in either bartending or just the whiskey industry as a whole?
I'm seeing it more. I'm seeing both. I'm seeing both. There's a lot more intentionality in the industry where people are kind of looking out and looking at the landscape, and that recognition of like it could be better. It should be more reflective of what society looks like. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing a lot of small groups who are taking their own initiative. There's Black Bourbon Society.
Yeah, it's very
There's
current.
which they just had the Boule here last week,
Mm-hmm.
which I was at.
Mm-hmm.
That are getting the word out. They're doing educational programs. They're building enthusiasm, and brands and other people are recognizing that. And I see a lot more bartenders out there, and a lot more people being intentional with educating themselves. Because through that, that's just like any career. That's how you build up.
Right.
Yes. So I'm seeing a lot of that, but I'm also seeing a lot of people move into top level positions, whether it's people of color, women, people who are differently abled, which is fantastic because
Yeah.
we all love whiskey. I mean, like I said, I've been drinking it since I was 3 months old. So.
Not sure if they did that at my house or not. Not that that's a bad thing. But
No, it's a bad thing.
I was
but
never told if it actually did happen. Um, so this is your first bourbon festival.
Yes.
What did you think it would look like when you were invited?
I honestly had no idea. I mean, because I've been to Tales in Chicago. We have food festivals every other day.
Tell them about Tales of the Cocktail. That's what she was referring to as Tales.
Yes.
What does that look like compared to this?
Very different. So, Tales of the Cocktail, we just celebrated our 20th anniversary, and it's in New Orleans at the coldest time of year, July. It's in New Orleans right during monsoon season.
Sweet.
But it is a week-long celebration of cocktails in the cocktail industry. So, like here, there's a lot of seminars that are going on.
It's largely a trade.
It's largely
Yeah.
trade, but there are a lot of consumers who come. There's a lot of parties. All the big brands throw parties that are fun with bands. So there's serious stuff, and then there's also giving back to the community. The first day, a lot of people go, and the school system there. We paint a school or we help out. But it's about 30,000 people from all over the world.
Oh my! I had no idea.
Yeah, who come to Tales of the Cocktail. So it's it's the largest global spirits and cocktail festival that happens.
So this is we sold everything out. It was 7,000 tickets, and it's consumer centric. I mean, is there anything like this that you've seen across the country?
Not where it's whiskey focused, bourbon focused. Like I said, there's definitely in Chicago, we have a lot of open air fests like this that you see pockets of trends, but this is the only thing that I've ever seen where it is like there is a main topic and it's about celebrating, Kentucky Gold. So this is pretty cool to see all the people, because we talk about it as brand people, but to actually get to intermingle with the consumers, the people who are drinking it the most, is always wonderful.
I think it's a great thing. I think it helps make it more approachable. I mean, because bourbon kind of took this leap into almost the wine sophistication realm for a while.
Oh,
and it got
absolutely.
a little snobby, and
Yeah.
it's really an approachable and affordable product. I think it's kind of on display here today. Are you gonna get to walk around and go see some people, or you're a lady on the move?
I'm
I know
a lady
that.
on the move. I'm actually not walking, but going straight to the airport after this.
Oh my goodness.
So I got to go work. I work the whole country with our company. So I travel about 38 weeks out of the year doing what I do. So I'm in Houston, Texas on Sunday for the next 4 days. So.
Oh my goodness, gosh. Well, if you want her autograph, you gotta act fast. Gotta get your Heaven Hill bottle. Stand up to say hello. Gosh, last question. What would you talk about that I haven't asked you?
Ooh, what would I talk about?
What would you wish that I would have asked you, but I didn't? What's the parting thought that you'd give these people?
Parting thought is that this is a spirit of love and an industry love. I love this industry. I love working in the hospitality industry. I love being with people, intermingling with people. I met some people who live in Chicago today, and they were at the class, and they were like, "Okay, we're going to look for you." So I think it's just always, be open to experience and have fun. Like I said, life has been really serious for a while, so
Yeah.
have fun, and then be kind.
Be kind. It's easy to be kind with a little bit of whiskey in you, right?
Absolutely.
Any questions from the audience? All right. Get back to having a good time. This lady's going to get on an airplane and go home. Thanks, Lynn, so much.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure
It's great
to
to
meet
be
you
here.
finally. Yeah.